Have you ever paused to think about how incredible it is to be alive right now? While daily life can be tough, we're part of the most remarkable periods in human history. Over the last 2.8 million years, the past 2 centuries stand out with an average lifespan reaching 73 years. Compare that to the 18th century in France, where most people barely reached 30, or classical Greece, where the average lifespan was 25, or back in the Neolithic period, when it got as low as 20. Our ancestors endured countless hardships, extreme climate changes, deadly predators like saber-toothed cats, and limitations of their own bodies. But what was the absolute worst time to be human? What made this era a living hell for humans, and how could we fare in such conditions today? Let's find out. We love to talk about how technology is ruining everything, almost as if we're nostalgic for a time without airplanes and smartphones. But let's ask ourselves this: how far back are we actually willing to go? The truth is, the conveniences we complain about today were unimaginable luxuries to those who came before us. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have had it much easier than other human species, and it's something we should be truly grateful for. Life as an early human was often pretty tough, and paleontologists frequently find fossils of early humans who met very gruesome fates. Research shows that many human species faced harsh conditions, but one group in particular, Homo Habilis, which lived about 2 million years ago, had it really rough. They died so young that most didn't even make it to their teenage years, with an estimated average lifespan of just 12 years, more than 6 times shorter than what we experience today. Think about that for a second, barely living long enough to experience childhood. What's even crazier is that this number might even be lower, as a study of 26 random specimens showed a lack of infants, suggesting the mortality rate was much higher than we thought. All in all, being a Homo habilis would have likely been the worst time to be a human, with a life that was short and brutal. This is much more than having no heating in the winter, a limited supply of food, or no antibiotics to fight infections. It's far more brutal than you would expect. Stick around as we uncover some shocking truths about how they lived, the creatures that enjoyed hunting humans, and how we'd likely struggle if we were suddenly thrown into their shoes. First things first, let's figure out why Homo habilis had such a rough life compared to all our ancestors. Life was an uphill battle for Homo habilis. They were among the smallest early humans, with an average height of under 4 feet or 1.2 meters, a full 32% shorter than the average person today. Their weight was just 60% of ours, making them physically fragile. To make matters worse, their skeletal build wasn't particularly strong, leaving them vulnerable to injuries. Falls were almost inevitable, as these hominins spent a significant amount of time climbing trees. Chimps, which are better climbers, often experience major falls, so it's likely that Homo habilis faced similar accidents, possibly more frequently, given their less specialized climbing abilities. Despite their small stature and ape-like traits, Homo habilis marked a significant step in human evolution. They lived between 2.3 and 1.65 million years ago and displayed features suited for their partially arboreal lifestyle. Their long limbs and specialized hands allowed them to climb and swing efficiently. This ability was crucial in evading predators in the treacherous landscapes they inhabited. For context, Homo habilis likely had a hairy appearance, resembling their ape-like predecessors, Dinopithecus. These earlier hominins shared many physical traits, such as their facial structure. Their long, powerful arms were still built for climbing and swinging through trees, making quick escapes from predators possible. While Homo habilis ventured into the open grasslands to reap the benefits of its resources, the world beyond the trees was full of danger, and retreating to the safety of the canopy often became their best bet for survival. Before we continue, please be sure to subscribe to the Insane Curiosity channel if you haven't already. This helps support the channel and ensures you don't miss out on future high-quality content. Now, let's look at their food. What did Homo habilis eat? And how did that make things much harder for them? Homo habilis had a knack for making life harder for themselves, starting with their diet. Unlike many tree-dwelling animals that rely on a mix of fruits and leaves, Homo habilis leaned heavy into carnivorism. This choice often puts them in direct competition with much larger, deadlier predators, further increasing the risks. Their oversized incisors and thick, heavy jawbones were built for tearing into flesh, giving them one of the highest levels of meat consumption among early humans. Sure, they balanced it out with plenty of plants, but their taste for meat forced them out of the safety of the trees. Worse still, they had a thing for fish, which lured them to water, a hot spot for lurking dangers. And it wasn't just what they ate, but how they got it. Homo habilis didn't exactly have the tools, size, or strength to be top-tier hunters, so they specialized in scavenging. Yes, scavenging, a risky strategy when you're tiny, poorly equipped, and surrounded by some of the most dangerous predators in history. Armed with only basic stone tools, their best defense was to chase off smaller scavengers like jackals and cheetahs. But those wins were few and far between, especially when larger predators like lions, hyenas, or saber-toothed cats got involved. To make matters worse, those same predators didn't just want the meat, they wanted Homo habilis too. With their small size, limited speed, and general vulnerability, they were the snack of choice for at least 30 known carnivores roaming East and South Africa. Big cats in particular seem to have had a special fondness for hunting them down, dramatically shortening their lifespans. So being a Homo habilis just wasn't about scavenging scraps. It was about doing so while dodging a lineup of terrifying ways to die. Whether it was a lion's claws, a crocodile's jaws, or a pack of hyenas closing in, every day was a gamble. Direct evidence of these gruesome encounters is scarce, but it's clear their environment was a constant battle for survival. Despite their scrappiness and determination, Homo habilis didn't have much of an edge against the predators of their time. Life was short, brutal, and filled with danger. Now, let's see what creatures made life a living hell for the habilis. If you were a Homo habilis, chances are you lived in constant fear of becoming dinner for something much bigger and deadlier than yourself. One of the worst nightmares looking around was the Meganterian, a jaguar-sized saber-toothed cat that roamed Africa for the entirety of Homo habilis' existence. Despite its jaguar-like build, Meganterian was far stockier, with lion-sized forelimbs ending in massive paws armed with recurved claws designed to tear into flesh. Once caught, a Homo habilis victim faced a swift and brutal end. Meganterian's serrated teeth, including its iconic elongated canines, would pierce the throat, severing arteries and nerves to ensure unconsciousness within seconds. But not all encounters were quick. Evidence from a fossilized Homo habilis skull suggests Meganterian occasionally used a far more terrifying method, biting an entire human head. A specimen with puncture marks on the back of its skull confirms the attack came from the front, meaning the predator enveloped its victim's head in its jaws. This horrific maneuver was likely killed by suffocating the prey while inflicting severe brain and skull trauma. It's a chilling reminder that for Homo habilis, a single moment of inattention could lead to an unimaginably gruesome death. Meganterian wasn't just an occasional threat. It was a specialized human hunter. Analysis of carbon isotopes in its remains indicates that Homo habilis made up a significant part of its diet. This saber-toothed predator targeted our ancestors more frequently than even the Dinofelis, another formidable predator of the era. Dinofelis, nicknamed the Terrible Cat, shared the same habitats and likely hunted Homo habilis too, adding to the constant danger. Unfortunately for Homo habilis, the predators didn't stop there. They had to look out for Machairodis, one of the largest saber-toothed cats ever known. Some species weighed up to 893 pounds or 405 kilograms, rivaling modern male polar bears in size. This massive predator's great weight and power meant a single swipe of its paw could incapacitate an adult, and young Homo habilis were especially vulnerable. Escaping Machairodis was no easy feat. Despite its bulk, it was a skilled jumper rather than a long-distance chaser, using powerful leaps to catch prey. Climbing a tree for safety was rarely an option. It could reach its victims with alarming ease. Then there was Homotherium, slightly smaller than Machairodis, but just as deadly. Its unique canines were shorter and broader than those of other saber-toothed cats, turning them into puncturing tools capable of slicing and stabbing simultaneously. The serrated teeth, with their irregular, wavy edges, delivered devastating bites. For Homo habilis, encountering Homotherium meant facing a predator equipped with the perfect weapon for taking down prey quickly and efficiently. Survival for Homo habilis was a constant battle against these predators. Between Meganterion, Machairodis, Homotherium, and Dinofelis, their environment was a deadly gauntlet of big cats, each equipped with specialized killing tools. Life wasn't just about finding food or shelter. It was about avoiding a gruesome death every single day. These predators not only shaped the behaviors of Homo habilis, but likely influenced their evolutionary trajectory. Every moment spent in fear of razor-sharp claws or crushing jaws reinforced their precarious place in the ancient food chain. But it doesn't stop there. While big cats were a nightmare for Homo habilis, they weren't the only predators making life short and brutal. Another deadly family that had a taste for our ancestors was the hyenas. Much like the cats, there were multiple species of hyenas prowling the ancient landscapes, but two stood out for their sheer ability to wreak havoc: Pachycrocata and Chasmoporthetes. Let's start with Pachycrocata, a creature that had bad luck for Homo habilis written all over it. This wasn't your average scavenger. Pachycrocata was one of the largest hyenas to ever exist, rivaling the size of a lioness. Its most terrifying feature: a bone-crushing bite that was among the strongest of any land mammal, pound for pound. Worse yet, its ability to shatter bones gave it access to nutrient-rich marrow, meaning it showed up in carcasses frequently, putting it in direct competition with Homo habilis, who relied on scavenging for survival. As if that wasn't bad enough, Pachycrocata likely hunted in packs. A single one wasn't terrifying enough, but an entire group? That was a death sentence. And hyenas aren't exactly known for their mercy. In many cases, they eat their prey alive, turning an already unlucky fate into an unimaginably painful one. It's safe to say that Pachycrocata wasn't a predator you'd want to cross paths with, or even hear in the distance. Then there was Chasmoporthetes, which, while smaller than Pachycrocata, brought its own brand of terror. Often referred to as dog-like hyena, this species was much more gracile and nimbler, trading raw power for speed and agility. Unlike the lumbering Pachycrocata, Chasmoporthetes likely hunted in even larger packs, moving swiftly across grasslands in search of prey. This wasn't exactly great news for Homo habilis, because while a single hyena might finish you off quickly, being swarmed by a pack of smaller, relentless hunters could mean a prolonged and agonizing end. Chasmoportheads' pack hunting strategy made them a constant threat. Their smaller size didn't make them less dangerous, it made them more efficient and capable of coordinating attacks and overwhelming their targets. For Homo habilis, this meant no matter how fast they climbed or how quickly they tried to retreat, a pack of Chasmoportheads was likely close behind. But the real terror with Chasmoportheads didn't just come from its pack hunting strategy. It was in its physical design. The limbs of this hyena were built for insane speed, almost identical to those of a cheetah, earning it the nickname the running hyena. This was a serious problem for Homo habilis, who, unlike these speed demons, were not great runners. Sure, they could manage some endurance running, but it wasn't anything that could rival the quick, deadly pace of Chasmoportheads. To make matters worse, these hyenas weren't just opportunistic feeders, they were hypercarnivores. Over 70% of their diet came from meat, which they tore into using teeth that were very close to those of big cats. As nightmarish as these hyenas were, they were nothing compared to the real danger lurking in the water: giant crocodiles. Now, Homo habilis might have thought they had a good thing going, fishing for food by hand in the rivers, but reaching into a crocodile's territory like that, not the best idea. And these crocs were huge, even by today's standards. The largest of these ancient crocs belonged to the Crocodilus genus, but these were no ordinary reptiles. The two largest species were Crocodilus throbjarnersoni and the terrifying Crocodilus anthropophagus. You can probably guess what the anthropophagus part means: human eater. Now, you might be thinking, this is just a fearsome name, but it's backed up by evidence. Archaeologists have found remains of juvenile Homo habilis with damage to their legs and feet, matching the bite marks of these massive crocs. It turns out the Crocodilus anthropophagus had a special fondness for ambushing prey, specifically targeting the legs of early humans. Once the croc had its grip, it would either drag the unfortunate victim into the water to drown or use its infamous death roll to rip limbs off. There's no nice way to go out like that. These crocs were armored with tough, scaly hides, and at full size they could reach up to 25 feet or 7.5 meters long and weigh over 1.5 tons. Just to put that into perspective, the largest crocodile ever recorded, Lolong, was only 20 feet long and weighed 1.1 tons. So yeah, Crocodilus anthropophagus was a beast, with a bite powerful enough to crush bones and a diet that seemed to revolve around humans. The terrifying creature also had two prominent ridges above its eyes, making it not just a fearsome predator, but also visually terrifying. With all those features combined, it's no wonder this crocodile was a major threat to Homo habilis. So, imagine being Homo habilis for a moment. You're small, not built for speed, and you're stuck between being hunted by pack-hunting hyenas on land and giant human-eating crocs in the water. It's no surprise that these ancient predators would have made life a real nightmare. While Crocodilus anthropophagus was undoubtedly a threat to early humans, it wasn't actually the largest crocodile in the neighborhood. That title belonged to its slightly older cousin, Crocodilus throbjarnersoni. This colossal predator also coexisted with Homo habilis, especially during the earlier days of their existence, and had no qualms about making a meal out of them. Though it wasn't drastically larger than the anthropophagus, it still reached an impressive 8 meters or 26.2 feet in length, cementing its place as the largest crocodile species ever discovered. To put it simply, this was one of the biggest true crocodiles to ever roam the earth. And since its fossil record is sparse, there's a good chance it could have grown even bigger. What made Crocodilus throbjarnisoni particularly unique was its massive, broad skull. Unlike modern crocodiles, this skull was wider and seemed specially adapted for gripping and crushing tougher prey, such as large turtles. But like most crocodiles, it wasn't a picky eater. It would happily snatch up anything that wandered too close to the water's edge. Early humans were no exception. In fact, the holotype specimen for Homo habilis, dubbed OH7, may have been one of its victims. The foot and leg bones of OH7 bear puncture marks consistent with the bite of a giant crocodile. These deep, broad wounds indicate the poor individual likely lost their limb and life in a violent attack. But as if being hunted by the largest crocodile ever wasn't bad enough, things get even more tragic for OH7. Paleontologists believe this unfortunate habilis may have not just fallen victim to one predator. Upon analyzing the upper body remains, researchers found shallow groove marks on the parietal bone of its skull. These wounds don't match any crocodile bite, but are very similar to the damage caused by large cats. This has led some scientists to speculate that a leopard-sized mammal might have taken a bite out of OH7's head. Ouch, to say the least. What's unclear, though, is whether this cat attack happened after OH7 had already died, or if it was an earlier incident that the habilis somehow managed to survive before ultimately succumbing to the crocodile. Either way, this poor specimen paints a vivid picture of how harsh life was for our distant relatives. The dangers didn't stop at giant cats, hyenas, and crocodiles. These predators were just the tip of the iceberg. What was the unlikely threat these humans faced, and did it affect its quality of life? By now, you're probably convinced that Homo habilis had one of the worst lives imaginable. But there's more. Their predators weren't just limited to extinct beasts. Many of their threats still roam the earth today. These include species from the Panthera genus, wild canines, birds of prey, and snakes. Snakes, in particular, may have been a significant factor in shortening their lifespans. While there's no direct evidence of snake attacks on Homo habilis, the relationship between primates and snakes has always been fraught. Even today, venomous snakes cause tens of thousands of deaths annually in Africa, and among uncontacted tribes, constrictors remain a leading cause of mortality. Some scientists suggest that this long-standing danger led to an evolutionary arms race. Our enhanced ability to detect camouflage threats might be an adaptation to spot snakes more effectively. In fact, studies suggest that primates, including humans, may be hardwired to fear snakes. So, while we lack fossilized proof of attacks, it's safe to say that Homo habilis likely faced their fair share of serpentine encounters. If constant predation wasn't bad enough, Homo habilis also had to deal with aggressive herbivores and omnivores. These included prehistoric rhinos, hippos, giant warthogs, elephants, giraffes, and large birds. Though these animals didn't hunt humans, they were territorial and highly dangerous when provoked. Even today, such species cause thousands of deaths annually across Africa. For Homo habilis, accidental confrontations likely ended up in trampling, goring, or crushing, a grim fate but slightly less common than predation. Yet the hardships didn't stop at the dangers posed by their predators or fellow animals. The Homo habilis diet itself presented problems. It wasn't just about being forced to scavenge. Their diet likely wreaked havoc on their health, particularly their teeth. A study of 26 Homo habilis individuals found that only about 40% had teeth in decent condition. The majority suffered from severe enamel wear, cracks, and chipping. And if you think dental issues aren't such a big deal, consider this. The oldest known Homo habilis specimen was just 25 years old, yet its teeth were already in poor condition. Shockingly, even children didn't escape this strange dental issue. Several fossils of individuals under 10 years old already showed major damage, and one 17-year-old specimen had teeth in worse shape than a modern elderly person with poor dental hygiene. This widespread damage wasn't necessarily caused by scavenged meat alone, but likely by a combination of tough plant material, bones, and flesh. With their lack of hunting prowess, Homo habilis often had to settle for scraps or tough, fibrous food, which only worsened the situation. Another big issue that likely contributed to even more deaths for Homo habilis was their environment. During the Pleistocene, Africa went through extreme climate shifts. These fluctuations led to periods of intense cold and increased dryness, causing food to become scarcer. With fewer options available, starvation became a real issue, and it's thought that as the climate worsened, populations were forced to rely more on scavenging meat to meet their caloric needs. Unfortunately, this scavenging habit brought them into closer contact with dangerous predators, who were also struggling in a dying ecosystem. One particularly interesting, though not all that surprising, aspect of these climatic changes is how they likely sparked deadly competition. As food became harder to come by, Homo habilis found themselves fighting not just against nature, but also other species of humans. Now, I don't mean other Homo habilis, though that was certainly a possibility, but rather other hominin species. Fossil remains have been found in the same areas as Homo habilis fossils, belonging to Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, Homo rudolfensis, and Paranthropus boisei. We know that sometimes interactions with these close relatives end violently. In fact, at least one Paranthropus specimen is believed to have been killed by Homo habilis and possibly even eaten. Despite this success, Homo habilis would have been at a severe disadvantage when it came to other Homo species. For one, they were the smallest Homo species of the time, and they weren't as well adapted for life on the ground. Any confrontation on the ground would have favored the other species. On top of that, Homo habilis had the second smallest brain of any known human species, with an average brain size between 500 and 687 cubic centimeters. That's about 25% smaller than the next smallest species, Homo ergaster. Meanwhile, Homo erectus had a brain that could be nearly double the size of Homo habilis' brain, likely creating a significant intelligence gap. This difference is also reflected in the technology they developed. For instance, Homo erectus had access to controlled fire, as well as tools like picks, knives, and cleavers, tools that would have given them a major edge in any fight. And as if things weren't tough enough, there were other threats to deal with, including a terrifying primate called Dinopithecus. This ape, which wasn't even a hominin, was closely related to baboons and could grow up to 3 times the size of Homo habilis. With its massive muscles and giant fangs, Dinopithecus would have been a force to reckon with, adding yet another predator to an already long list. In this brutal world, life for Homo habilis wasn't easy. Research suggests that the most dangerous time in a habilis life would have been around the age of 10, which is when mortality rates peaked. But even reaching 10 years old would have made someone one of the lucky ones. According to studies, about 40% of individuals didn't survive past their 10th birthday. When you factor in infants and juveniles, it's believed that mortality rates could have reached up to 60%. With these numbers in mind, the average life expectancy of a Homo habilis would have been under 12 years. This raises an important question. How did Homo habilis manage to survive for such a long time? The answer may lie in their technology. Homo habilis is in fact called the handyman, as it had the ability to access bone marrow and break down tough plant material, which would have helped them survive in difficult times. There's also evidence that they may have built simple structures, like a 1.7 million year old windbreak or shelter, suggesting they found ways to cope with the worsening climate. Additionally, they may have survived by living in larger groups. It is estimated that a group of Homo habilis could have numbered up to 85 individuals, which would have helped protect against predators and reduce the chances of any single member being picked off. But despite all this, it seems that the odds were stacked against them. The constant environmental changes, coupled with their small size, limited intelligence, and harsh living conditions, made life incredibly tough. Their high mortality rate may have been the thing that eventually led to their downfall. Or maybe it was simply the relentless pressure of their surroundings. Regardless, one thing is clear. Being a Homo habilis wasn't easy, and it would not have been life anyone would want to experience, even if you could travel back in time. That's it for today's video. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think? Would you by chance want to be a habilis? And what's your favorite predator from that era? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, then you should check out the one on your screen. Here's a video on what came after the dinosaurs disappeared. Thanks for watching.